Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, I was inspired by my daughter's creation. She created this while she was sitting down at my craft space, and she's inked up the leaves and inked up the petals, and then she created this circular thing to go on the inside of the flower. She found a button and she glued this one in, and when I saw this and saw what she had created, because I wasn't beside her when she was doing it, I was just so inspired to create something similar. So I have her to thank for this one. Now, my version of this is going to be focused on the center of the flower that she created. And so I just took a couple of sheets of cardstock and started making these circles. Now, I just kind of went for gold and did lots of these, but it's really, really simple. I took 3 or so colors from one color family. This one happens to be the Distress Oxide colors. I started off with Shaded Lilac, Wilted Violet, and then Villainous Potion. And all I'm going to do is just really simply blend these onto some of the cardstock. I'm using the finger daubers because these are nice and small to do this sort of thing. I think I would struggle a little bit to do these with some domed foam blenders that I prefer to use. They're probably a little bit big for me. But honestly, I have done blending before my videos using cotton balls, and that works really, really well for blending. So if you don't have the finger daubers, then you could always give those a go. But I just go around the color. These do not have to be perfect. They don't have to be super neat, because in the end, they end up looking gorgeous and unique either way. So this is all I did. Sometimes you can see on the very left hand side there, I have the plain blue ones, and that was just because I thought that would be a good inside color for some of the blue ones. Now, then I did think that I would like to create a few leaves. Now, these to me end up looking like avocados. Looks like I've cut an avocado in half. That's what it reminds me of. But I just used 3 different shades of green, the Twisted Citron, Mowed Lawn, and Rustic Wilderness. And I am going to just kind of make what I think is a leafish shape. And of course, I'm going to cut these out, so they're not going to, it doesn't really matter what they look like nonetheless. But then when I started these ones, I felt like they just weren't quite right. And I think I wanted a couple with just the Twisted Citron and the Mowed Lawn. And this is what I ended up using. The bottom ones were a little bit too dark for my liking in comparison to the flowers. So I ended up using the top ones. Now, this is such an easy project. No dyes needed at all, and that's something that is really nice just for a little change. I'm going to take some little fine detailed scissors, but I guess any are going to work because all you have to do is cut out some circles. Now, I was going to do this with dyes, and that would of course make perfect circles. But honestly, I prefer it when I just cut them out with scissors. So I preferred this look much, much better. Now I'm cutting these out a little bit funny because I managed to put a big slice in my thumbnail, my finger. So I have, it's a little bit painful at the moment, and I have a big sticky plaster on there. But anyhow, I did have to wait a couple of days until I was able to do some filming again because it was just too painful. Anyhow, that's why my cutting technique is a little bit strange there. But anyhow, all you want to do is just cut out these circles so that you have a largest circle, a medium circle, and a small circle. In reality, you could go for gold and do 5 different sizes for each shape. You could do 10 or you could do 2. I think you can just do whatever number you find right for you and whatever time you have time for. But I chose to do 3. Now here is where I'm going to cut them. I prefer to go right around the outside and do roughly 5 or so cuts that are centered in towards the middle. I find that if I come in and do all of these little cuts straight away, that I tend to start going wonky around the circle. So honestly, I find I do 5 big cuts around, all pointed in toward the middle, and then I fill in with all these little cuts. Now you can see I lost a little piece there. Don't panic about that. It doesn't matter if you accidentally do that, because I think it all just adds to the look anyhow in the end. And I know that there are scissors that do like multiple cuts at one time, but I do not have any of those in my stash, and this worked just fine. So you can see how this is going to layer up beautifully there. These are the purples. Now I went ahead and did this with several different colors because I had so many ideas popping in my head, and I want to show you a couple of ideas of how I am going to turn these into finished cards today. Now for the leaves, as I said, I went for those, the top ones which just had the Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn. and I am just kind of eyeballing a line down the middle and then going to do all the cuts down one side for the leaf and then all the cuts down the other side, because I think that this matches really nicely with the style of the flowers that we are going to create as well. Then you could either layer these up or have them as two separate leaves. That would look nice layered as well if you wanted to kind of follow how the flowers were going too. So that was really, really nice. I enjoyed this process. It was really just something that I could do kind of mindlessly and listen to a podcast or something at the same time. So I really enjoy that. Now, to pop these together, I ended up using a glue gun, some hot glue. I'm going to give these a little zhuzh, kind of zhuzh up the leaves a little bit just before I pop them down with the hot glue. You can do it afterward as well once you've glued them, but just easier beforehand. And you could also just use some liquid glue. You just have to wait a minute longer. I use the hot glue just because it sets up so fast and then I can keep going through with the process. So a little bit of hot glue between each layer means that they are going to also give it a tiny little bit of dimension too, and that helps with this look. So there is one of the style. It's not finished, but it's kind of, we're working through the process. Then I have some buttons. I loved my daughter's idea and I'm going to carry on with that. I found some sort of ish matching buttons to go in the center here. They don't have to be perfectly matching. In fact, an opposite color or a contrasting color would look perfect for the center of these two. Then from here, I am going to turn these into cards. Now, I want to show you one of my favorite tricks that I have when changing the shape of stamps. So I have my stamping platform here, and I have my Altenew, I think this is called Leaf Canopy, and I have this gorgeous long sentiment here, which is going to work perfectly. I'm going to place all of the bits and pieces where I think I want them to go for my first card, just so I can get the placement pretty much right. And then I want to curve my sentiment around that purple one. So I'm going to kind of put it in place where I think I want the sentiment, the middle of the sentiment to lay. And then I would, if I were doing it the first way, I would pick this up and then I would curve the stamp to match the outside of the purple flower that we have. So you kind of half pick it off and you see where you're going to put it and curve it around a little bit and check it and then check it again and curve it a bit more, fix it. But I have a cheats way for you. And this is what I do when I am trying to get the curve right for my shape. Now all I do is I take a whiteboard marker so that it's going to wipe off, and then I just draw around on the front of my stamping platform where I roughly want my stamp to curve, and then I place the stamp on that drawn whiteboard line, and then it is perfect for the shape that I need. And of course this is just going to wipe straight off. It's just a whiteboard marker. You could do it with any temporary sort of marker that you thought you could wipe off the front of your stamping platform, and I have perfect placement. This says a special note of thanks to you. So that is just a nice, quick and easy way to avoid having to kind of check and then go back and then check and then close it and then check. And of course that doesn't hurt your stamping platform at all because it's just going to rub right off. Now I have made the front panel here a little bit smaller than my card base. My card base is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I did pop the card front up on some fun foam just to give it a little bit of dimension. And then I'm going to pop these on here, and this is a really simple card, but I had so much fun with these flowers. I could have gone on forever, but I'm just going to show you a few cards today. Again, just because my glue gun was out and ready to go, I'm going to use my hot glue gun, but of course this is just paper to paper, so you could use liquid glue if you wanted to. Then once I have popped these down, and of course this dries really, really fast, so I don't have to wait at all, but I'm going to turn this over and cut these with my Tim Holtz long bladed scissors. Now this does make a little bit of a confetti mess, but not too bad at all. And then when I flip this over, I really love the look of this one. This was such a fun and simple card to create. And if you didn't want to do this with inks, you could do this with plain cardstock. You could ink up the edges if you wanted to. You could use acrylic paints to make these little circles. You could use watercolor pencils or watercolor paints, or you could use coloring in pencils. I mean, you can use anything, or just plain cardstock, as I said, to create the colored circles, and you'll be away laughing. So now I have this embossing folder that I have had for so long and been meaning to use, and it is absolutely gorgeous. But I love the detail in the background. I will tell you that I changed my direction for this card many times. Now at this point I knew I wanted to use the blue flowers, and I love those little leaves poking up the side. So this is what I originally kind of thought I would do, and then somehow I would have a sentiment on a paper strip. What you could also do is, imagine that white strip that I have is actually a green strip, and we could do it as like a stem. So you could have it like an actual flower. Or I could have piled all 3 of the green flowers up nice and kind of close together in the middle, and then had some of the leaves coming out each side like a little bouquet as well. That would have been another option. But at this point I thought I would kind of have this on this front panel and then pop a sentiment over top, but I end up changing my plan as well. Now, I do like the way that this looks. I do like the texture that the cutting has on those leaves. So I'm going to, again, just use my hot glue gun and pop these leaves in the corner, just coming out of the edge of the flower. And then, as I said, you could use any glue for this. Doesn't have to be hot glue gun, but I must admit it did work very, very well, and it is so, so quick. Now at this point I liked it, but I thought, why don't I make it a square up the top of my card? So I'm actually going to trim down this panel, trim off some of the edges, and make it so that I have enough room to put a little border on as well. The white on white does look stunning, but for this one I thought that I could add a bit of a blue background, and that would match the card as well. At this point you don't want to be introducing any new colours. I am going to take the blue from the largest layer of the flowers, and that is the Uncharted Mariner colour, the Distress Oxide, and I'm just going to go around on a spare piece of paper here, make sure that I can fit my little border there. I need to go a little bit further down. Usually I also have the tip when you can just do a little bit of masking to create the edge border here, but in this case I decided to make an actual matting layer, and that is just fine too. I do my little trick to center it up with all 4 of my tabs, and then I'm going to cut down the sides with my long bladed scissors, and this is going to go up the top of my card. Now I did think that the border was a touch thick for me. I just like a really fine little blue colored border, so I am going to trim it down just a little bit so it's only just peeking out that tiny little bit of color. Then when it comes to a sentiment here, now I will tell you that this is actually going to be a baby card. This is for a friend of mine who has had a gorgeous baby boy, absolutely gorgeous, and I am going to make this a little congratulations. So I'm stamping this in the same blue Uncharted Mariner ink. Now it's not my favorite to stamp with Distress Oxide, if I'm honest. I don't find I get good results. But in this case I made an exception, and I did use my stamping platform just in case, and it came out pretty good. I am going to add a few little clear droplets on this one at the end, but I think I forgot to do this before I finished filming. That's okay. I love the texture in the background here created by that embossing folder. I think that just adds a nice finishing touch, but these were so simple and fun to create. I will leave the links to any supplies I have used down in the description boxes below, as well as a link to the Buy Me a Coffee in case you would like to support my channel. But other than that, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, bye!